Hi, Virginia. So, good morning, everyone. Always so good to see you. I want to revisit wise speech this morning with a little different angle. Hi, Nancy Elizabeth. As you will recall, it's one of the eight aspects, eight practices of the Eightfold Path in the Fourth Noble Truth that the Buddha taught to as a way of ending suffering. And there's three baskets of the Eightfold Path, and wise speech is grouped in the moral conduct basket, along with right action and right livelihood. And it's one of the three components of moral conduct, and I would suggest that it's foundational for the other two, for both wise action and wise livelihood. And that's because it's the medium with which we pursue wise action and the medium with which we pursue right livelihood. And you may recall, we've talked about this in the past, the Buddha talked about four components of wise speech: obtaining from false speech, in other words, not lying, obtaining from slanderous speech, obtaining from harsh speech, and obtaining from idle chatter or gossip. He put those four specific forms of speech under wise speech. And it's just a huge part of our human journey. It's a powerful tool. It can destroy lives. It can create enemies. It can start wars. Or alternately, it can, share wisdom, heal divisions, deepen connections, create peace. I mean, it's really a powerful tool, and it can have tremendous ramifications in our lives. And it's really the thing that separates us from other creatures. It's the thing that separates us from, I was watching a documentary on chimps last night, and who are our closest relatives. They share 98% of our DNA, but they don't talk. But they were saying that their form of conversation is grooming. They groom each other as a way of communicating. Well, we talk, and sometimes that's for the good and sometimes not so much. Because there's lots of challenges when we seek to or set an intention to engage in right speech. And I want to home in today on one such challenge, because it's one that I think is really a common one, and that is reconciling wise speech with expressing our views and expressing our opinions. I know many of us, myself included, feel very strongly about much of what's going on these days. And, in this partisan, polarized world in which we live, how do we express strong views and opinions skillfully? That is our challenge. Because we can contribute to divisiveness, we can contribute to conflict if we express our opinions. I'm not suggesting we sit on them, but I'm suggesting that we can learn to or set an intention to do so skillfully. Because at the end of the day, if a strong point of view that I want to express, it has tremendous, among other things, it has tremendous amount of ego involvement. It's grasping and clinging to my point of view as the right view, the correct view, the only view, my way or the highway, whatever. And that's where we get into trouble. When we get so invested and cling so tightly to our view that we just are not open to even having a reasonable discussion. So I think emotional reactivity, when we get riled up in terms of our speech and our opinions, is really one of the primary enemies of wise speech. And all four of those components that the Buddha described, false speech, slanderous speech, harsh speech, chatter, or gossip, can involve reactivity, can involve emotional arousal. And this is really the antithesis of equanimity. This is just not being skillful, okay? And it's a huge challenge. So when confronted with a charged issue, when confronted with a strong opinion, can we keep our emotional reactivity in check? Because if we do so, we're more likely to speak wisely, skillfully, non-violently, and non-provocatively. And I would add, more persuasively and more effectively. That if we're yelling at someone, very often our point's not going to be well received. Okay. So might it be better to not speak at all if we can't control our reactivity than to do so unskillfully? You know, as my late mother used to say, if you can't say something nice, then don't say anything at all, you know, that sort of thing. I mean, she was probably right about that. But my own struggles with wise speech are many. You know, one of the most frequent challenges that I face in my life is the tendency to engage in harsh speech when I'm impatient. You know, it's like, come on, get it done, let's go. What's the problem? Hurry up, whatever. You know, it's not a compassionate style when I fall into that. But I have come to recognize, and I think many of us are aware of this, that when we're impatient, it's about my ego. Okay, it's about the belief that I am absolutely right. It's my sense of self-importance. It's my judging mind directed at the other person or the other point of view. It is the absence of compassion for the person with whom I disagree and with whom I'm impatient. Okay. And again, even if I don't express it out loud, usually my body language, my tone, my mood, my facial expression conveys my impatience, conveys my negative judgment of the other person. But here again, if I notice, there's that word again, if I notice and catch myself, pause, use discernment, I am more likely to use wise speech with less reactivity. And guess what? No surprise. The outcome is usually better. There's usually less suffering on my part. There's usually less suffering on the part of the person with whom I'm engaged. And my point of view is more likely to be heard and acknowledged, even if I don't change the other person's mind. Okay. So wise speech when we have a charged issue, that's the challenge. So what has been your experience with wise